Switching gears, the 2025 NFL season is now about 7 months away following the Philadelphia Eagles' 40-22 win over the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 59. Here in Las Vegas, the Raiders finished their season just 4-13 under head coach Antonio Pierce. Under the guidance of Raiders minority owner Tom Brady, the team has since fired Pierce and hired former Seattle Seahawks coach Pete Carroll to take his place. Raiders reporter Heidi Fang of the Las Vegas Review-Journal and NFL analyst and former NFL wide receiver Mike Pritchard joined me to discuss these major moves and more. Okay, so are either of you aware of any opposition to the hiring of Pete Carroll as head coach?
I'm not. I mean, I think the Raiders finally got it right.
Yeah?
It's been a long time coming, but I think they finally got it right. And here's why. You know, Pete Carroll, a lot of people will look at his age, but I'm going to disregard his age. I'm going to look at his experience. I'm going to look at the fact that he's one of 36. There's only been 36 head coaches that have won a Super Bowl, and he's one of 36. He's almost more exclusive than that. One of 14, and those are coaches that have won multiple Super Bowls. He was 1 yard away.
I think with the process, they looked at Ben Johnson, right? And that may have been why it took a moment to get to Pete Carroll, just because they did have their eyes set on the Lions offensive coordinator, perhaps even the defensive coordinator, whom they also interviewed. But when it came down to it, they made the right choice in getting Pete. I know he was always like right there in the mix, like as the top choices go. So with the combination of Brady, Spytek, also Pete Carroll, and then working in the coordinators that they now have with Chip Kelly and Patrick Graham, I think the formula for success is set there.
I ask that because I wonder why it took so long for him to get hired in the first place. And perhaps it really wasn't even that long. It was one season that he missed. But in that offseason, there were 8 new head coaches hired, and he didn't get picked up. Was it because of his age? Why do you think?
I think so. I mean, I think, you know, you look at Bill Belichick, maybe there was some issues there with his age and how long will it take for him to help us here. With the Raiders, they came to a decision with Spytek, and they hired him first. So I think that was important to get the GM first and then get the head coach to make sure everybody's going to be on the same page.
He's the new general manager coming from Tampa Bay.
Right. Correct. So for the Raiders, they needed all their ducks in a row. They all need to be on the same page because they haven't been on the same page for a number of years now.
20 years?
At least 20 years, right?
Well, and you say that, and how do you know that?
Well, I think the losses kind of speak to how many winning records they've had, which haven't been many. You know, the 2 playoffs that they've been able to make in the past couple of decades, and that just speaks to the culture there hasn't been set right, whether it's between a coach or a GM or between a disconnect with a quarterback and a coach or a coordinator, or do you have the running game? Do you have the offensive line? You know, all the different things that start off with the head coach position and trickle down and even general manager position. I mean, they've gone through, you know, Reggie McKenzie from when I started covering the team to
how many of those introductory press conferences have you been to?
At least 4.
Sure.
Ziegler and Mayock and and now we have Spytek. So that's 4,
Pete Carroll, 73 years old, won a Super Bowl, went to a Super Bowl and lost it by 1 yard, did not hand the ball to Marshawn Lynch. However, Marshawn Lynch was at the introductory press conference for Pete Carroll, for the Raiders. What does that say about him as a player's coach?
He's got credibility. The players love him. I think what players realize is that Pete Carroll helps you become a better player because he's going to pull it out of you. He wants you to compete, and that's, as players, that's all we ask for. But we're also going to understand who we are. And that's what I mean by finally being on the same page again, is that Pete Carroll's going to mark out an identity for this football team, an identity that they haven't had. How do you let Josh Jacobs go, but yet you want to run the football? Why do you bring in, you know, Devontae Adams when you're going to let go Derek Carr? It doesn't make sense, right? So now everything's going to make sense for the players. They're going to have an identity. They're going to know what expectations are. And then more importantly, they're going to know how to get there, because Pete Carroll and Spytek know how to get there.
Something I loved about the Legion of Boom when he was with Seattle 2013, and you have like Cam Chancellor and Richard Sherman and Earl Thomas, right, holding it down. They weren't just a physical team when they got out there the way that they played, but they were about we. You heard the chant before they took the field. This is about us. We are a team. Pete was right along with them, firing them up, and if not throwing the footballs to them before in their warm-ups.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so Pete Carroll did talk about a timeline. How long will it take for the Raiders to become successful, for him to turn this team around? He talked about this at the introductory press conference. Let's take a listen to that right now.
You know, you're all wondering about timelines and all that. It took us a few years to get to the very top of the last couple programs I was with. We're starting right now, going for it immediately. We don't have some timeline. We got to make it 5 or 6 years down the road. That's not what we're thinking. We're going to start right now to go after it and build this team as quickly as we can. As John saw Max back there, Max, send the message, man. We're coming after you. We're going to come find you guys and get this thing rolling as soon as possible with the highest of expectations, with a mentality that will drive high performance in a way that hopefully everybody's going to hear us and they're going to know us.
And he has a history of doing that with USC and Seattle, turning them around pretty quickly. I'm interested in him and his addressing, or would you say calling out, Max Crosby, who was there, the pass rusher for the Raiders, who has had so much success, 4-time Pro Bowler. What do you think about him doing that?
Well, Max is the leader of the team. Max is the guy that is going to set the tone with the rest of the team about his thoughts. Like when they wanted Antonio Pierce, Max was spearheading the campaign to get Antonio Pierce there along with Devontae. He's one of the leaders, the voices of the team, the face of the team. So I think it was important for him to get on that page with Max, and he knows Max is about business, and Max was there to represent that for the team.
Right.
So I think that it was really important to pass that on and to get everybody geared up in the same direction, to already feel before they have a step into the door during the practice and off season, this is the tone we're setting.
So depending on what you read, Max Crosby may not be a Raider next year, or he may be a Raider next year. What do the Raiders have to do to keep him, and what does he have to do, I guess, to stay? I mean, there is an argument. Some would say maybe trade him and get a bunch of draft picks so you can rebuild quickly. I don't think either of you think that's the way to go, right?
No. No. The Raiders, they don't keep their best players. I just talked about Josh Jacobs. I think when
it's bizarre.
It is bizarre. But like I said, I think they're on the same page now. So when you call out Max Crosby in an introductory press conference, you're letting him know that we want you. Now, what is it going to take to keep him? Money. It's going to take, Max needs a new contract.
Yeah.
He is under contract through the 2026 season.
No guaranteed
with no
money,
guaranteed money.
And he's coming off injury.
Yeah.
So as a player, he's definitely thinking about that. But Pete Carroll knows that. Spytek knows that. But for the Raiders to have high expectations like Pete talked about, they need to keep their best players.
Right, and granted, the numbers that we talk about when you look at Max's contract right now, it's at about $43 million over 2 years, not guaranteed. The level of where his position has come for the high-end players is now around 30. So 30 a year. So you're thinking, okay, how much more can they come up for Max? Where's the cap room? How do they also pay him? And then still bring in a good volume of players? Because if you're going to look at a quarterback position and try to bring in someone like, let's say, a Sam Darnold, you're going to have a good pocket to bring him in as well to a contract. And there's about 28 players coming into this season that are going to be free agents of some sort, whether it's unrestricted or restricted free agents, that they're going to have to look at those players as well.
The Raiders need a quarterback. So then what makes most sense? To keep Max Crosby, try to get a quarterback in free agency or in the draft? What do you think is going to happen?
Amber, I think there's always ways to keep a player. I call it caponomics because you can play games with the salary cap and you can use structure salaries a certain way, upfront money a certain way. If you want a player, you find a way to keep them. If you want a player in free agency, you find a way to go get them. So it seems like, and what Heidi's mentioning, that the Raiders might attack a quarterback in free agency, but also look to draft a quarterback as well. So that will make a lot of sense from a cap standpoint, too, for a longevity standpoint for the Raiders.
I know hindsight's 2020, but I wish they had done what they needed to do to go after a guy like Jaden Daniels.
Right.
That wasn't going to happen
Right.
with the picks and the capital that they had last year. They obviously, I think, did try to make that push because of his connection with Antonio Pierce. But now we're looking at, okay, Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward in the draft. How do you either try to secure one of those players should they fall to 6?
Right.
But
Can the Raiders even, will they
Yeah.
already have gone prior to
I think
the
so.
Raiders' 6th pick?
I think so.
Yeah.
And so then you're looking at Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss. He's probability in the maybe second round or end of the first after what I heard how he performed at the Senior Bowl from one of our beat writers, Vinny Bonsignor, was singing his praises after the Senior Bowl. So now what does that do to his draft value? How do you try to secure somebody like that? But ultimately, I think the best plan is that they do get a quarterback in free agency, not necessarily that Band-Aid guy,
Right.
but somebody that can lead as they bring up someone as a rookie as well. So I guess it would kind of be a Band-Aid, but I don't want to use
Somebody
that
who
term.
can compete.
Yes,
Right,
yes.
right.
yes.
And who might that be? Sam Darnold? I've even heard people say, might Russell Wilson join Pete Carroll?
Well, I think Russell, is looking at Pittsburgh still. He kind of dodged those questions at the Pro Bowl. He is going to be a free agent, so they do have to lock him into a new contract. So there is always that what if the reunion does happen. Overall, I would say Sam Darnold does kind of have the potential to be one of those guys, but when you look at the last 2 games that he had with Minnesota, that's concerning that Sam Darnold's ghosts have returned from the past. So you wonder, okay, well, what do we need to have a Sam Darnold? Do we need new offensive linemen to give him extra time and protection? Or do we need someone like Daniel Jones? Do we need someone like Jameis Winston's also out there? There's opportunities to bring in somebody, but I think the big question is how would they work into Chip Kelly's offense? Do the Raiders need to go shopping for other guys to be able to support the quarterback that they do bring in from free agency?
I'm glad you bring up Chip Kelly, the new offensive coordinator coming from Ohio State. Who does he want as a quarterback?
Well, it's important because you look at Cliff Kingsbury and what he did with Jaden Daniels. Jaden came into the league. He didn't really have to learn a pro-style offense. Everything was highly familiar with what he was doing from college. So with Chip Kelly, who's coming from college, you can insert a younger quarterback because I think Chip Kelly can adjust his system to a college quarterback, not necessarily make that college quarterback become a pro quarterback right away. So that goes to the identity, I think, again, for the Raiders. The Raiders are going to want to run the football. They're going to have to boost the offensive line. They're going to have to get better there first, I think, more so than try to get it right with quarterback. They'll get it right with quarterback. I think they'll have a lot of opportunity to get it right with quarterback. But that offensive line has to be repaired in order to be what Pete Carroll wants this football team to be.
Last thing, Tom Brady is a minority owner of the Raiders. He is also an analyst for Fox. There have been talks of a potential conflict of interest. The NFL has taken action to make sure that he is not doing what that would make it more of a conflict of interest. You were telling me this off camera, Heidi.
Well, he can't go into the locker room to do his prep work. A lot of times during the week, the analysts have the opportunity to go into the team's locker rooms, get information, try to build a rapport. And on top of that, he cannot go in any Raiders preparation. He cannot step foot into the Raiders practices. So those are a couple of things that they've done. There's some other small rules that he has to follow as well when he is broadcasting. And I think what Tom Brady has done so well, though, is that he does communicate with Roger Goodell. We heard him speak about that, the NFL commissioner, during the Super Bowl, of how much in contact Tom is with him to say, am I doing this right? Am I following the rules to the T? And am I crossing, every single thing that I need to do off of this list that you have set out for me as a stipulation of me holding this job with Fox for the next decade, basically, and also being a part owner of the Raiders. So to what Roger Goodell said, they may even look at those rules again in this offseason right now, so maybe restructure them a bit. I don't know which way that would be. Would they loosen them? Would they tighten them? But I would think that they saw Tom toe the line perfectly, that he did exactly what he needed to do to be able, and I didn't see that there was a conflict. To be able to do both.
Did you?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Tom's a film junkie anyway, so he's got a long way to go as an analyst, but he'll get better. But he's going to be dedicated watching film to get better as an analyst. As a minority owner, I think all that will take care of itself.
Last question, this is kind of a curveball, but what is Mark Davis's succession plan? Could it perhaps be to have Tom Brady own the Raiders one day?
I mean, Dana White.
Dana White.
Who knows? He doesn't have a
Any
son
children,
or
no.
a child,
Yeah.
so
It's not too late.
it's not
too late.
It's not too late. He's 69. He's 69. I just know he needs to avoid what the Broncos went through, because I was in Denver when you had two different families from
Yeah.
Pat Bowlen trying to own the football team, and it was Game of Thrones. So as far as a plan, I don't know what that is, and I don't know if it's not soon. I think Mark is entirely enjoying owning this football team right now.
Plus, I
UFC
think-
President Dana White has been rumored to what?
No, I was just throwing
throwing it
out
out there.
some billionaires maybe
Okay,
that could
okay.
buy the team.
Geez, I was going to say, I haven't read
Yeah,
that.
I know. Derek Stevens. Oh, no. What other billionaires do we have in Vegas
right,
right now?
yeah.
So,
Okay.
I mean, if Jeff Bezos can't get to space.
just
Boy, oh boy. Heidi Fang, you can watch her coverage, follow her coverage on vegasnation.com. That is under the Las Vegas Review-Journal umbrella. Mike Pritchard, follow him on X. He is everywhere.
I am.
Thank you
I am.
both for
Thank
joining
you.
Nevada
Thank you.
Week.